Hello, everyone. Today we will begin our lesson from a daily work scenario. Let me begin by asking you a question. If your company received a promissory note issued by a Chinese supplier, and the amount was written only as renminbi 1 million without the CNY designation, would you accept it? Why? Please think about the answer for a moment. In 2023, an Indonesian company issued a promissory note to a Singaporean company because it failed to clearly state the unconditional promise to pay. The bank refused payment, and the Singapore court ruled the instrument invalid. Singapore's Bills of Exchange Act requires that a promissory note must contain a definite amount, a payment term, and the drawer's signature as core elements. The result of this case was that the promissory note was rejected, and the Singapore creditor could only pursue the debt under contract law without enjoying the fast enforcement procedures of negotiable instruments law. This case tells us that when using promissory notes in ASEAN countries, they must comply with international standards, such as the UN Convention on International Bills of Exchange and international promissory notes. Otherwise, the rights under the instrument may be lost. In this case, the bank refused payment. The court ruled the note invalid, and the transaction was delayed by 2 months. You can imagine that this was not only a 2 months time cost, but also possibly led to goods being stranded at port, additional storage fees, and even damage to the commercial reputation of both enterprises. A small oversight in completing a negotiable instrument caused such a large loss. Today, our teaching task is to learn the correct method of completing a promissory note and the precautions to avoid similar mistakes. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to 1. Accurately understand the definition and function of a promissory note. 2. Master the 5 key elements of completing a promissory note and identify common errors. 3. Distinguish the differences between China and ASEAN countries in the use of promissory notes, especially in signature and form requirements. Let us first study the definition of a promissory note. A promissory note is an unconditional written promise to pay issued by the drawer maker, promising to pay a definite sum to the payee or its designated party at a future certain time or upon presentation. In China-ASEAN trade, it is a commonly used payment guarantee tool, like a legally binding payment guarantee letter. A valid promissory note must contain 5 key elements. 1. The title must clearly state promissory note. This is the identity card of the instrument, allowing all parties to recognize its nature at a glance. 2. It must contain an unconditional promise, such as the wording payable at sight. It cannot include conditions like payment after receipt of goods. Otherwise, it loses the essential characteristic of unconditionality. 3. The amount must be expressed correctly using ISO international currency codes such as CNY, USD, SGD, etc., and showing both figures and words. As we discussed earlier, writing only renminbi is insufficient. The international code CNY must be added. This is international practice and a strict requirement in bank review. 4. The payee information must be clear, specifying exactly who is to be paid, including the correct company name and address to avoid ambiguity. 5. The signature must be standardized. Chinese enterprises usually require both the company seal and the legal representative's signature. ASEAN enterprises must comply with local legal requirements. Special attention. ASEAN countries have different requirements. Singapore accepts electronic signatures. Vietnam requires paper originals. Thailand requires the applicable law to be indicated. These details are like different countries' entry requirements. Ignoring them may cause trouble or even transaction failure. This reflects the importance of, when in Rome, do as the Romans do in international trade. We must respect and understand the laws and business practices of our partners' countries. Now let us analyze a teaching case. In May 2024, a Chinese export enterprise signed a contract with a Vietnamese import enterprise for the sale of machinery equipment with a contract amount of about 1,500,000 yuan. The parties agreed to use promissory note plus partial advance payment as the payment method. The Vietnamese company issued a promissory note of 1,200,000 yuan as the main payment instrument, with the remaining amount paid by telegraphic transfer. The promissory note was guaranteed by a Vietnamese bank, with a payment term of 90 days after issuance. The contract also stipulated that the promissory note must comply with the provisions of China's law on negotiable instruments. The promissory note issued by the Vietnamese buyer's bank to the Chinese seller was written as renminbi 1,200,000, 1,200,000, without the CNY designation. The drawer only affixed the company seal without the legal representative's signature. Now, take a moment to identify the problems in this promissory note. What changes are needed for the Vietnamese guarantee bank to accept it and make payment smoothly? Time is up. Let us analyze together. First, the amount column must add CNY, written as 1,200,000 yuan. Second, the drawers section must add the legal representative's signature. Company seal plus legal representative signature is required for recognition by Vietnamese banks. Here is a practical suggestion. When receiving a promissory note in settlement, first check whether the international currency code is present. Then check whether the signatures are complete. And finally, confirm whether the key information is clear. In international trade, details determine success or failure. A rigorous and meticulous work style is the foundation for smooth transactions. Now, let us summarize today's key points. A promissory note must follow the 5+1 principle, 5 essential elements. Title, unconditional promise. Amount with international currency code, payee, and standardized signature, plus one local special requirement. For example, Vietnam requires paper originals. Singapore accepts electronic signatures. Remember this 5+1, and you can avoid most pitfalls in completing promissory notes. Think about this. What special requirements does your country have for signing promissory notes? In fact, many ASEAN countries have their own rules. This is why we must pay special attention to national differences. Everyone, as future practitioners of international trade, we must not only master solid professional knowledge, but also cultivate a rigorous and meticulous work attitude and cross-cultural communication skills. In addition, through standardized operations in our work, we ensure the smooth progress of every transaction. This is also a reflection of our responsibility and commitment. For homework, please complete a small task. Interview local bank staff to learn about your country's special requirements for Chinese promissory notes. In the next class, we will share together. I believe that through practice, you will gain a deeper understanding of completing promissory notes. See you in the next class.